Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Chof Dalid Amud Aleph. 15 lines from the top at the new Mishnah. The previous Mishnah had taught us that Kol HaKelim Nitolim B'Shabbos, and it brought an exception to the rule, and that is the Kelim that are of the category of Kelim that are Muktzah Machmas Chisaron Kis. And we explained that to mean that the owner is makpid on these Kelim, because the Kelim can easily become ruined, and therefore there'll be a financial loss. Therefore, he's maksed daitoi. He has no intention at all to use these Kelim on Shabbos. For example, a sheichet's knife, or the knife of a moyel. All of these things are considered to be muktzah machmas chisaron kis. Says our Mishnah, Kol HaKelim nitolin litzarech v'sheloi litzarech. Our Mishnah says that all of these Kelim that we just mentioned in general can be carried either litzarech or shaloi litzarech. We'll leave it vague because the Gemara will explain a machlokes what these words are referring to. Rabbi Nechemia Omer ein nitolin ela litzarech. Rabbi Nechemia is the opinion that you cannot move a kli unless it's litzarech for that designated purpose of that kli. Other than that, cannot be moved whatsoever on Shabbos. Says the Gemara explaining our Mishnah with the following question: My litzarech, my shaloi litzarech. Let us define what it meant in the Mishnah when it says you can move all kelim, whether it's litzarech or shaloi litzarech. What does it mean? Omar Rabbi, litzarech means davar shemalachtoi leheter litzarech gufoi. When that which it says in the Mishnah you can move litzarech, it refers to a kli that's malachtoi leheter. For example, a spoon, or a knife, or a cup. All of those things can be moved, and it's considered litzarech, and you can move it litzarech gufa when you need those items. Shaloi litzarech davar shemalachtoi leheter litzarech mekoymoi. When you take that knife, that spoon, or that cup, not because you need those things, but because you need the place that it's situated on, then you can move that. It's called litzarech. That which the klisha malachtoi le'iser, the hammer that we mentioned before, that has a primary purpose to do binyan or make bepatish malachos that are also midi araisa, but they can have a secondary purpose to then be a nutcracker. So if you're going to then move that litzarech gufoi, that's mutter according to this opinion of Rabbah, but litzarech mekayma would be osir. Also, Rab Nechemia lemeimar va'afilu davar shemalachtoi leheter litzarech gufoi in litzarech mekayma loi. Rabbi Nechemia comes along and says even that kli, which is malachtoi leheter. For example, let's say that cup, that can be moved only litzarech guf for the purpose of using the cup to drink, but for an other purpose, and even lemekayma, you would not be able to move it. Omar le Rava. Now Rava asked on this shita of Rabbah, and he asked the following question: Litzarech mekoymoi, shaloi litzarech karis lei. You're saying if it's litzarech mekoymoi, that's not called litzarech. After all, it's litzarech of Shabbos. Misvara asks Rava that if it's litzarech, it means that you need it for a Shabbos usage. So granted, you might not need the item itself, but you would need the place where it's. That's also considered to be litzarech. Elo Omar Rava. Therefore, Rava explains differently our Mishnah. Litzarech, that which said you can move a kli that's litzarech, it means davar shemalachtoi leheter bein litzarech gufay bein litzarech mekoymoi. The tzarech of Shabbos, which include litzarech for the usage of that kli, or for the makom that you need that it's situated on. Shaloi litzarech, when it says you can move the kli that's not litzarech, that's referring to va'afilu mechama itself. It's kli shemalachtoi leheter. Like that patish, like the hammer we mentioned. So then he says, litzarech gufoy litzarech mechaymoy in mechama litzeloi. If you want to move it because you need the hammer to then cut to open your nuts, to crack your nuts with, or you need the place where it's situated on, that's mutter to metaltel. Also, however, if you want to just move the hammer to protect it from ganovim, or because it's baking in the sun, that would be osir. Also, Rabbi Nechemia lemeimar, and Rabbi Nechemia comes and argues and says, "Va'afilu davar shemalachtoi leheter litzarech gufay litzarech mekoymoi In Mechama Letzeloi, he says when it comes to Davish Malach Leheter, it's such a kli. It's true, I agree, you can move it. However, not Lechama Letzel. So that's the shita of Rabbah who argues on that argues on the first shita of Rabbah. Says the Gemara, Yossi Rav Safa, Rav Acha Bar Huna, Rav Huna Bar Chanina. The three sages were sitting together. The Yasbi V'Kamrin, they're sitting Divrei Torah. LeRabba Aliba de Rabbi Nechemia. According to the first shita of Rabbah, who explained Rabbi Nechemia to say that you cannot move a kli shemalachta leheter unless it letzarech gufo, the usage of that kli. They asked, Hani ka'arois heichi metaltalinon. Those bowls that one already ate from, and now they're sitting there on the table. How can you move them? According to Rabbi Nechemia, the sheet of Rabbah, you cannot move such a kli. So what can you do on Shabbos with such ka'arois that are sitting there on the table after usage? Omar lehu Rav Safra midi dahava agraf shel ri'i. Rav Safra explained, just like a graf shel ri'i. Graf shel ri'i, we said, is a kli, that is a bedpan, and therefore because of its mu'us usage, therefore it can be removed even with one's hand. There's a special heter to remove such things. So too over here, the plates, the ka'aros, that are going to already been used for a meal, which will only become disgusting, maybe even flies and things will then come across and fly over and bother the people that in the table, or just become disgusting based on the smell or the sight. Therefore, that itself is enough to then matir even Reb Nechemia to move such kelim. Omar le Abai le Rabba. Abai asked Rabba the similar question. Lemar, you, according to your shita, Rabba, Aliba de Rabbi Nechemia, who holds that Rabbi Nechemia says that you can only metaltel a kli shemalachta leheter l'tzorich the gufo itself. Then hani karas heichim metaltilahu. How can you remove these karos after usage? Or merlei. So Rabba's response to Abaye was the same response. Rav Safra chavrin tirgama. Rav Safra, our chaver, our comrade, he already explained. Midi dahava agraf shel ri'i. Ask the Gemara the following question. Abaye on Shita's Rava. Esvei Abaye le Rava. Abaye asked Rava the following question. Meducha im yesh bashum metaltlin oso. V'im lav ein metaltlin oso. We saw this question before, where Abaye asked Rava, according to your Shita, a kli shemalachta le'isir can be moved with the tzarech guf or the tzarech. So how come if this meducha, which is used, we said it's a bowl where you smash and you crush herbs inside of it, including shum, garlic, and if it has the garlic inside, it stayed over here, you can move the meducha, you can move this bowl. But if it does not have the shum inside of it, then it's muktzah, you cannot move it. Asks Abaye on Rava, but according to you, even a kli shalachta le'iser, you can move it. So why over here is it problematic to move? According to me, it's very good. Abaye's shita is that it's only problem. It's only mutter to move a klisha malachta le'iser l'tzarech gufoy, but not l'tzarech mekoma. And therefore, that's what the Bryce is talking about. That l'tzarech mekoma, it's aser, because you don't have the shum inside of it, and therefore there's no need to then move it. It's also to move. But according to you, Rava, why can't you move it? Answers Rava hachab mayaskinon. The mechama letzel, that which the Bryce is talking about, you cannot move, is referring to you can't move it to protect the maducha from ganovim or from its getting ruined in the sun or maybe the rain or whatever. That's what it's talking about. But if it's an issue of moving it because of gufoy or mekaima, it would be mutter. Esvei, he asks another question that we saw before on Rava. V'shavin she'im kitzev alav basar she'os l'taltaloi. Here we're talking about not the mortar, not the meducha, but rather the pestle, which is also used as a piece of wood, very often to grind, but also was used to then cut meat on. So it says over here that Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai on Yantif argued, can you use this Yoel, can you use this Eli rather, can you use this Eli, this pestle, to cut your meat on? So according to Beis Shammai, it's also, but according to Beis Hillel, that it's mutter because of Simchas Yontif. But even Beis Hillel agrees with Beis Shammai that once it was used to cut your meat, it no longer is used to be able to be moved. It's muktzah. And that's what we're quoting over here. If you already cut your meat on Yontif, so then you cannot move this Eli because it's muktzah. So he's asking, Rav, according to you, why? A klisha malachta le'isr is able to be moved. Why can't you move it? Answers Rava, the same answer again. Hachanami mechama letzel. That which he says you can't move it is because mechama letzel, to protect the Eli. That is not that when it comes to klisha malachta le'isr. Granted, you can move it. Sorry, gufas or mekoimoy, but not mechama letzel. Now the Gemara brings a Mishnah that's a kasha on all the shitas as follows: Ein soimchin es hakidero bivakaas v'chein bedelis. You cannot, on Yontif it's talking about, you cannot rest your kidera, your pot, on a piece of wood, or on a delis, or on a door. V'ho bekaas the b'yomtiv dabish melachto leheterhu. On Yontif you're allowed to cook, and therefore this is considered to be a klisha malachta leheter. So why is there a problem? A bakas, a piece of wood, can be used for fire. So why is there a problem to lean your pot on this bakas, on this piece of wood? This would be a kasha on everybody. That's because everybody agrees that a klisha malachta leheter can be moved. Alma davish malachta leheter ben lesar gufo ben lesar mekoimo oser. So there's a kasha both on Araba and Rava. Answers the Gemara, Hasam, there in Yontif, my timer, is it also to then take your pot and lean it on the bekas? Is because Kivne b'Shabbos davish malachtoi li'isruhu gzeira Yontif otav Shabbos. Because on Shabbos, this piece of wood would be osir, to be metallic, to be moved. Therefore, they made a gezerah of Yontif otav Shabbos. So although it's not muktzah on Yontif, it is muktzah on Shabbos, and therefore they said it's also to then lean your pot on a piece of wood on Yontif. V'chitema Shabbos gufei tishteri the hadavish malachta li'isur l'tzarich gufa l'tzarich mekayim shari. If you'll say, but on Shabbos also a klisha malachtoi li'isur is permitted to be moved l'tzarich gufa l'tzarich mekayim. Says the Gemara, Hani imili hechadi ikataras kli alov. That's when the item that's a kli shemalach lister is a kli, it's a vessel. Then you can move it. Let's say gufa l'sam b'koimoy. But hechad lekataras kli alov loy. But if it's not a kli, in this case a piece of wood, then it's not going to be something that you can move. In other words, a piece of wood has another designation of muktzah. It's called muktzah machmas gufoi, which means it's inherently muktzah. The item itself, a piece of wood, another example would be a rock. That's inherently muktzah, and therefore you can't move that whatsoever. So too over here. Although on Yontif, it's not a problem, the piece of wood, because you can use it as firewood, and therefore you can metaltal it, but you can't lean your pot on it because of a gezerah of Atu Shabbos, since on Shabbos it can't be moved. Ask the Gemara, Omiga Zrina, do we make gzeros of Yontif Otu Shabbos? Vehatna, behold, it states in the Mishnah, Mashilin Peiros Derech Aruba B'Yontif Avalo B'Shabbos. It says you can lower your peiros. Let's say you had peiros that were drying on the roof, and you, lo and behold, you look up and you see in the sky foreboding clouds that are coming to then bring about a storm, and it's going to rain on all of those fruits that had dried up that are sitting on your gag, on your roof. So it states over here on Yontif, you're permitted to then open the skylight and put all the fruits by throwing them down, lowering them down into your home down below. So although there's some tircha involved, they were matir on Yontif. Now this can't be done on Shabbos, and yet you can do it on Yontif. So you see over here that there's not a gezerah of Yontif Otu Shabbos. Ask the Gemara, Umilo Gazrinin, do we not make a gezerah of Yontif Otu Shabbos? Vehatna, behold, it states in the Mishnah, Ein bein Yontif l'Shabbos elo oichon nefesh bilvad. It states not only in regards to malachas d'oraisa, but even those enactments midirabanan, there's no difference between Yontif and Shabbos except for oichon nefesh. So we do make gzeiras of Yontif out to Shabbos. Answers the Gemara, Rav Yosef lo kasha, it's not a difficulty. There are two different Tanoim are teaching these two different Mishnayos as follows. Ho Rabbi Eliezer, Ho Rabbi Yehoshua. One of them is authored by Rabbi Eliezer, while the other is authored by the sage Rabbi Yehoshua. The Tanya, it says in the following brisa, which we saw before, we're talking about a situation on Yom Tif where a mother, let's say cow, and her offspring, a calf, fell into a bore on Yom Tif. Now, the Torah says, you're not allowed to then shecht both the mother and the offspring on the same day. And over here, you have a situation where both are in the bore. So you can only shecht one, which means you can only bring up one to shecht technically. Says the Brisa, Rabbi Eliezer oimer male es harishon, al menas l'shochtoi. You bring up the first one on condition to shecht it for Yom Tif. Whereas the second one, you lower down food and you keep it in the bore so that it's able to survive throughout the Yom Tif. That's the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yehoshua argues and he says, you bring up the first one on condition that you're going to shecht it. That's what it appears that you're bringing it up for. And then when you bring it up, you see, wait a second, this is a bit scrawny, I prefer the other one. So you don't shecht the first one, and instead you bring up the second one. So now you're able to bring out two. You can decide which one you want to sheichet. So it comes out, according to the second sheet of Rabbi Yehoshua, that he allows a tircha on Yontif. In other words, that he would be authoring the Mishnah that says, Mashilin es haperois b'Yontif, derech aruba. He's not concerned about that little tircha because on Yontif they were mekil. So too over here we see that in the case of the two animals that fell into the bore. And thereby the other opinion, Rabbi Eliezer, would be the one that says that there's no difference between Shabbos and Yontif in regards to halachas except for oichel nefesh bilvad. Ask the Gemara, Mimai, how can you indeed prove definitively that this is the machlokes in Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer, that also is the difference in the two Mishnayos, which each one authors the other one. Memai dilma ad kan lo kam Rabbi Eliezer hasam. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer only said his din over there in regards to when the two animals fell into the bore, because hasam ela de efshel lefarnasa, because he's able to then keep the second one that's still in the bore with livelihood, with giving him parnasa, with giving him food, by keeping him alive. So therefore, he doesn't allow you to be makil and take that second animal from the bore. But in a situation where you cannot keep the animal alive in that situation, so then he wouldn't be machmir. He would be makil, and therefore he would say, when it comes to the peiros on the gag, meshilin peiros derech arubos. Inami, alternatively, ad kan lo ka'amar Rabbi Yehoshua hasam the efshir b'harama. The only reason Rabbi Yehoshua was making in the case of the boar is because there's harama. He can say, after picking up the first animal, this is not an animal that I really want to shecht. I see that it's scrawny. I want a more meaty type of animal, one more that's fuller. But if you cannot do harama, like in the case of the aruba, or the case of the ashilin esaperos derech aruba, then maybe over there he would not allow you to put into the arubos, because there's no harama over there, and therefore he would be machmir. Ela amar Papa lo kasha. Rather, Papa explains the two mishnayos as not being a kasha to contradict one and the other as follows: Ha beis Shammai, ha beis Hillel. That in the case that there's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov except for oichel nefesh bilvad, that's shita beis Shammai. And that which is in Meshilin as appears derech arubos, that would be Beis Hillel as follows. This nan Beis Shammai oimrim, on top of kuf chav daled amid beis ein moitzin es hakoton ves halulov ves sefer Torah levishus harabim. Beis Shammai says you cannot bring these various things into the shus harabim from the shus hayachid on Yom Tif if it's not a food item for food preparation. For example, a lulav to fulfill the mitzvah of lulav. Beis Hillel matirin. Beis Hillel says it's mutter. So you see that Beis Hillel is mekil when it comes to the inyan of of taking out from Rishus Yochid to Rishus Rabim, and therefore the same way that he's makel in regards to the din over here, so you can also say that he's the author of Meshilin, whereas Beis Shammai, who says that over here that you can't even take out from the Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim on Yontif, is because he says Ein Bein Shabbos LiYontif Ela Oichel Nefesh Bilvad. The Gemara says Eimer Deshmas Lehu LeBeis Shammai. When do you say Beis Shammai says this din that you're not allowed to then take out from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim on Yontif, that he's machmir in this regard? That's in regards to Hoitzah. Tiltu mishamas lahu. But in regards to tiltu, who says that he'll be machmir the same way? That in regards to tiltu muktzah, he'll say that there's a problem to metaltil and have a problem of making a gzera of Yontif Atar Shabbos. Maybe he won't make such a gzera, like we saw in the case of the wood, that you can't put the pot and be soymechit on the wood. Who says that Beis Shammai would say when it comes to tiltul, also that would be prohibited because of a gzeira of Yontif Atar Shabbos? Maybe only midiraisa is the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. When it comes to things that are diraisa, then he says we make a gzeira of Yontif Atar Shabbos, but midrabanan we wouldn't. Answers the Gemara, v'tiltul gufei lab mishum hoitzohi. Is the tiltul itself not also because of hoitzah? In other words, the same way that you'll be mezalzel in the tiltul, which would be itself the beginning of the hoitzah, so too you'll come to then become mezalzel in the hoitzah itself, of transferring an item from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim. So therefore, from here we see that if Beis Shammai was concerned to take an item, even a mitzvah like a lulav, from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim, because of a gzeira of Yontif Atar Shabbos, so too then he would also then be concerned when it comes to tiltul, because tiltul, even though we're talking about a piece of wood being soymech the pot onto a piece of wood, but because on Shabbos in Muktzah he'll say that will make a gzeira of Yontif Atar Shabbos, because if you're mezalzel again in the tiltul, you'll come to mezalzel in the hoitzah.